I'm very pleased to see you all here again this morning. We never know, do we, when someone can't turn up because they died last night. And you know, the death doesn't happen tomorrow. It always happens today. And I thought that today we might go into this question of death together while you examine what I'm saying in your own experience. And if it's beyond your experience, then you listen with what I call the ring of truth. Now, the ring of truth is beyond your perceived experience. It echoes down inside your system, and you get an intimation that this is true, although you might not know it. So I ask you to listen for the ring of truth and to listen in your own experience, because we know very little about death. The scientists, as usual, are of no help to us whatever in anything that is important. The scientists are clever and important to us in things to do with comfort, convenience, and contrived excitement, such as landing on the moon, going to Mars. And I ask this stupid question when I hear they're going to go onto Mars. How long is it going to take you to forget that they landed on Mars yesterday? What's it going to affect your children's? How's it going to affect your love life? What's it going to do for the human race? Absolutely nothing. Now, isn't that a terrible thing, that the billions of dollars are being poured into something that has absolutely no meaning in it at all, except man's infinite curiosity and excitement for a little while? Well, they landed on the moon in 1969. When did you last discuss it excitedly with your children and everyone, your lover? What a yawn. What an achievement. That's not an achievement. An achievement is to be the master of myself, to be responsible for my life in here in this body, to be a master or a master in both senses, both genders, of love, of truth. I just received a letter and I only had a moment to look at it. And a part of it I saw that a woman who's been with me for some time, and her man, that the writer's asking, why is this woman taking such an attitude when she's been with you so long, an attitude about woman and love, assuming that she's a woman of love and taking on that authority when she obviously, from what the letter says, is not a woman of love. For the letter says that the woman gets angry at the smallest thing. How often have I got to tell you all that if you get angry, you are not love? How often have I got to say that? How often have I said it? Year in and year out, and yet, why does anyone believe a woman that says she's a woman of love and authority if she gets angry, if she gets depressed, if she gets sad, if she gets resentful? How can you be a woman of love? You cannot be. And so whoever wrote the letter, I would say, why don't you know what I have said? That she is not a woman of love. And you can tell her, a woman of love never gets angry. I mean, it's so straightforward, isn't it? Now, death, a very important question. and statement. Let us begin by examining just what death is. What we think of it as, with our minds, is the death of the body. And that's true, because the body is the only thing that dies. And death is the end of your sense. All your senses die with your body. And because your memory is connected with your senses, all your memory dies with your senses. So you have no memory, and you have no senses, and you have no body. Now, what does that leave? And the answer is, it leaves nothing. Nothing to speak of. Nothing at all is there left to speak of. Because what is left is consciousness. The very thing that I endeavor to help you to be and realize as you go into this body, beyond the senses, into the state of being. Now you'll notice that in the state of being, you are beyond thought. You have no memories, because memories create thought. You have no information. You have no knowledge, no knowing. It's just as if you were nothing. And of course the mind, which is the servant of the senses, the body, gets very afraid of this state of nothing, of being. And if I enter it suddenly or more deeply than I usually do, the mind starts to get very agitated, because the mind is always used to something. Because the mind, even if it's nowhere, if it's deprived of its senses, has always got its memory to think about mum and dad, where I should be, where I want to be, all the rest of it. It can conjure up some data from the past. So that's what we're doing when you come to me. Every word that I speak, every example that I give, everything is to get you to be able, with your intelligence, which is the only thing you've got, is your intelligence in the spiritual life. That's all you've got, is your intelligence. Not your mind, because your mind is not intelligent. It is to get your intelligence to be able to sink down into the place of being nothing, which, as you remember I said yesterday, is the place of consciousness. In other words, it is the place of death. Behind the body, behind the senses, behind all wanting, all trying, all competing, is the place that I'm talking about, the place of being. Now it is very difficult for us, unless we are in that place, had the knowledge of that place, to visualize it, which the mind tries to do, or understand it, the place of consciousness. But the closest we can get is when we go into being and endeavor to drop deeper and deeper into this place of being, which is the place of death, which amazingly is the place of life. Death is the place of life. Here in this existence, where we are all bodies, with our memories, our feelings, our mind that's always busy, this is the place of living. There's no life in this place. This is the place of living and imagination, of fear and doubts, and unhappiness and wanting and trying, and the fear of failing is terrible in us at every level. of failing to love, of failing to be, of failing to just do. It is a terrible place of fear, doubt, guilt. Now, when you're dead, of course, because you have no body, and you have no memory, and you have no senses, then there's no fear, no doubt, and everything that you have ever been is wiped out as far as knowledge is concerned. That is nothing. And the most difficult thing in the spiritual life is sometimes in everybody's life, if they're sensitive enough to see it, of course many people are not sensitive enough to see anything connected with truth, so they miss it. But sometimes the energy of death rises in the body into intellectual reflection, which means that you can sense it in the body. And there is something very, very fearful to the mind that has risen in my body. It is black or it is dark because it has no experience in it. And it is very, very real. And it is just there. It doesn't move. It doesn't say anything. It's just there. And it is terrifying to the mind and emotions. And the first thing that people tend to do, is to think, to do something, to change the atmosphere, to get up, do something. When really, in the spiritual life, the best thing to do, if you can do it, and it's very difficult, is to just stay there looking at death, looking at this unknown, this indescribable energy that's in your body and that can rise in it. Because to be able to look into death is a very stilling thing. Now that's one side of death that presents us with an energy that we just do not know, and that is terrifying to everything that lives, that is projected into existence. But that's one aspect of death that you might or might not have experienced. But that's death for the living. Death for the dead is purely returning into consciousness. Now, as being that we practice here has no memory, no thoughts, nothing to do, so that is the state of death. Now, how would you describe that? So you can't describe death because you can't describe being. If someone were to ask you, well, he talks about being, well, how do you be? What's this being? What is it? And they always look for an entity, you see. The human mind always wants to make an entity of everything because it's used to dealing with entities. But how could you describe being? You would have to say there is only one way to know what being is, and that is to be it. I can't describe it to you. You have to be it. For it is beyond words. You see, words come from experience. Words come from the projection of existence. Words come from the human mind has made up words. And being is beyond existence and beyond the human mind. So how could you possibly describe being? You can only be it, can't you? And that's what consciousness is. And that's what death is. You can only be dead to describe it. And then you've got no voice and no words to describe it. So that's the first thing, that you already have death in your body because that is life. Death is life. Death is the death of all the suffering that you see. Remember that I mentioned yesterday, and I didn't hear one objection, that every little child that we love so much, who's born in this existence, is going to suffer. Sexual suffering, the enormous sexual abuse that goes on in this world. We haven't even taken the chimney off the top of it. We don't know, but we gradually, a bit of it's coming out, isn't it? The sexual abuse that goes on of children. How lucky those of us who escaped it are to have escaped. The broken hearts in love. The terrible sadness when the one that I love most dies. That only happens here. This is living death, but we can't see that because our name is living death. Now, if you're water, you can't see water, you see. But if you've discovered something else like consciousness behind this living death, you have the intimations of life. And that's why it's called life everlasting. Because you certainly couldn't say that living was everlasting as far as you and I are concerned, could you? Because living is of the body, and everybody dies. So life is everlasting. And you couldn't deny that life is in your body. Because you are alive. But we deal with the aliveness. We're concerned with the aliveness of our body, and very seldom with the life of it. For you see, the life has no attributes. Life has no attributes. Living has got all sorts of attributes and deficiencies and opposites. Living. But life has no attributes. Life is like the space between you and the speaker. How would you describe that? It's nothing, nothing to speak of. But yet look at it. Does this space not allow you to see the speaker? Is it not an enabling space for you to recognize your beloved and put your arms around him or her? Does it not allow you to walk around in the beauty of nature? This space that has no attributes, doesn't it allow that? Did we human beings ever think of the enormous virtue that space represents to us? And the answer is no. All we want to do is reach Mars, which is not space at all. We travel through space as though it was as though it were water or something you can name. We never investigate space. What is this space that enables everything of existence? What a remarkable thing it is. Because existence couldn't exist without space, could it? What a remarkable thing. And yet it has no attributes. And yet it is everywhere. There is no place at all, even in this table. We understand if we had a sufficiently strong microscope, we would see space between the matter. And our bodies are filled with space between the matter. Why? Because space is consciousness. Space is life that enables existence to happen. Now you're getting an idea of death. All that I've said, this enabling wonder, is what death is. And yet I haven't said a thing. I've just said how enabling it is of the miracle of existence. And that's what life is. The enabling thing of the miracle of my existence, your existence, my love, your love, and all the rest of it. Space. But if I want to stick to living, that is being a human being, instead of being a being of consciousness, then I will stick to my anger, my emotions, my guilt, my resentments, my fear, my self-doubt. Are you listening to me, please? Because this is existence. This is being human. This is being living. This is living. Now we're really living. You hear it. You hear it at a party or somewhere, or you feel it inside yourself when you were young. This is really living. Is it? Yeah, it's living, all right. But living is living death, because it's not going to last, and you're going to go down and be depressed or unhappy because you haven't got a job, or because you're so young you think that you're never going to get anywhere. You know the fears of youth, which are accompanied by a great drive into existence, which is right, because you must enter the living death before you can be free of it. In other words, you must live. You must gain your experience. You must go through your sexual abuse if that is determined for you by something else. You must go through the cruel father or the cruel mother and survive as best you can. You must go through prison if that is your lot. You must go through everything that everyone has to go through, because that's experience, that's living, to teach you that living is not a good place while you are emotional and you are negative and you have only the desire to live instead of to find life. And of course, the spiritual life is about finding life in this living death of existence. And life does arise in us, doesn't it? I mean, you walked stride down the street saying, what a lovely day it is. And you've got no negativity arising, no feelings arising in your belly. And you walk and you can look at the birds and the trees, and you look at the sun and the clear sky, and you say, what a beautiful day. You're one with it. That happens to everybody. That's life that comes through this, seeps through and then rushes through sometimes this dreadful deadening matter, an emotion that we are. It comes through for all of us, but how long does it stay there? It only stays there until the next thought comes about the past, about what I want, about what I do not want, or until the next emotion rises in me and blanks off the whole thing with a dark shadow of cloud over the sun that's always shining, the sun of life. Now, when you die, you are consciousness. You are everything that is right and good that I have intimated, because I can't describe death, because death is life. And life is without attributes except to say, from where we are, what can I say? What can I say that has no attributes? Very difficult in speech, because our speech is based on good and bad, on positive and negative. Or if I say, look at that, it looks like, we're always using metaphors to describe things, because we haven't got the words for the truth. But I will give you the words as close as possible to death, to consciousness, to life. It is good. Now, when I say it is good, I don't want you to be a Christian for Christ's sake, because the Christians invented good and bad. They invented a God and a dreadful thing called a devil. They invented it. They couldn't stand the good without the devil. Isn't that disgusting? For the only devil on the face of this earth, the only devil that's ever been there, is sex. You want to know what the devil is? sex. And sex gives rise to emotion, so we've got devilish emotion. End the story. No other problems on the earth, no others. Because life is here. So life is good. Anyone want to argue with that? Life is good. Because if anyone tries to take your life, you'll make sure that you know that life is good. And you won't be able to describe what it is except, I love life, or I don't want to die. Now, life is good, but this good that I'm talking about, unlike the Christian religion, or any religion, or any human thought, has no opposite. Now, we cannot imagine a state in which there is only good and no bad. Because our whole language, our whole way of living, did you enjoy yourself? You know, did you enjoy yourself to the children or to each other? As though it was unusual to enjoy. But how about if every moment was enjoyment, or the equivalent of that, or let's say good? That's life. There is no opposite to good, to right, to true in life. That's what death is. It is freedom, but that's the wrong word because it's an existential word, is freedom. Because you've got nothing to be free of. Because you have no memory of all that you went through here. The limitations of the human body, the sickness that everyone must get sooner or later, which can be called finally old age, is a sickness. Nobody escapes. So you don't have anybody to compare it with, the state with. So you can't get any description of death when you're dead. Just as in the spiritual life, in the stillness of the real spiritual life, when you are devoted to something that is unknown, that has no attributes, but you cannot help but just love it, whatever that means. So you receive intimations that there is something that I love beyond this existence, and in this existence as the love that I have that has no opposite. And that's very rare, isn't it? To have a love here that has no opposite, that has no fault in it, that has no need to correct anything in it, because it is pure love, pure consciousness, pure life. A very, very rare thing here. But man has invented, man and woman, the human mind and emotions, have invented a place of survival after physical death. And it is a dream. It's a psychic dream. You see, we think we are physical bodies, or yes, we think we are physical bodies, and that is the main thing that we are as we look in the mirror every day, all of us. It is affirmed for us by our experience that I am a physical body and I look like this and I recognize myself every time I look in a mirror. Therefore, I affirm I am a physical body and this is how I look. But through thousands of years, through the intimations in the beginning that there is something beyond living, a man and woman have lived emotionally attached to survival after death. And because we are not just physical bodies, most of our existence is psychic. I mean, you long for love. Is your physical body longing for love, or is that a psychic thing? Is that a lack in you, psychic lack? And when you receive love, it is a psychic thing that fills the lack for a little while. You see, love is psychic. It's not physical. But the only way through to the psyche as a reality is through the physical. Through the physical, love is the only way to reach this true love that's beyond even the psyche. Because that's all you've got, isn't it? You've only got a body. You can't show me anything else you've got. You might have a computer, but we're not talking about that, are we? And you might have a house, and you might have children, but they're not talking about that, are we? We're talking about you. And you are this body. In this existence, in this perception, in this relative reality of sense, you are the body and so am I. And we do everything with the body, don't we? We earn our living with the body. If we're writers, we don't earn it with our imagination. We earn it with our body. It is our body that types. It is our body out of which everything comes, the whole story comes. It is our body. Our body in the first instance is the truth. How we love to run from it. How we love to, instead of being the body in this existence now, which is the truth, how men and women have loved to imagine, oh, when I'm dead, I will go on in the same form as I am now. How they love to imagine that. How they love to imagine that when their child that they love so much dies, it will go on and be the same as it is now. Why is that? Because very, very few people are in the body, have taken responsibility for their own life, which is my body. My body is my life in existence, not my emotions. There's something that I've gathered through experience in this dreadful place of suffering and unhappiness, which, how long is it since you wept? How long has you said you had a broken heart? How long is it since you knew the staleness of a relationship that you try to get together but you can't? So I'm trying to say that so that you won't cover it over like people do, that it's good here. It is not good here, it is necessary here, but it's not good, because what is necessary is not necessarily good, is it? Only when you've had enough, only when you've seen the truth of existence, can you get out of it while you're still in existence. Can you enter the consciousness of life or death while you are alive, where I, the speaker, am? And I'm not dead. I am filled with life. And I honor life in the midst of existence. For I honor you. You are life. But that doesn't change the fact that you're going to die, that you're going to get sick and ill and diseased, even if it's only old age. So let's not paint any glowing pictures of this existence like those artists paint of angels and things coming out of the sea, you know, with Venus coming out of the sea and all these beautiful pictures which artists paint and which scientists show us, this bullshit that scientists show us of lovely pictures of Saturn and all the rest of it when they're purely computer realized. They're not sensed because no one has ever sensed them. They're computer, they're mechanical, and the colors are even invented. And the great sky which you see there now, that's it. You don't need a computer, you don't need anything, you just need to look at the glory of the sun which brings life to the beautiful earth. You don't need to work it out why. And you can look at the starry heavens and the beauty of the night and the beauty of the moon. And somehow something is intimated to you of something true and great and beautiful behind it. Intimations of the invisible. Intimations of life behind existence. For tell me, what is the moon? The moon is a sensory projection. When you die, there will be no moon to see. It is purely sensory. There will be no starry heavens to look at, because the whole universe of stars and everything you see is sensory, dependent on the sense of sight. Is it not? Am I making it up? Has any blind person ever seen the heavens? No. What a cheat it is. Do you mean to say that if I'm deprived of my sense of sight, that I'm denied the glory that is the sky, the night sky of stars or the moon? What a dreadful cheat that would be, would it not? Look, are you listening to me, please? I'm trying to show you the virtue of life. Wouldn't that be a cheat? That I could not see the glory of the night. But then it's not like that. That wonderful night that we see with our eyes is purely a sense projection, just like the next movie that you'll see is a projection onto a screen. The screen is called sense. And so everything that's projected through the brain goes through and is created as sense. Different forms, different bodies, all different. When the truth of it is that the whole universe, its glory and its beauty, is inside what begins with my body now. It is there now. All the stars, the moon, all the glory of the blackness, the velvet black in which the stars seem to be sitting, all that is the glory inside of my body now, this moment, only energetically and no differentiation. No this star, no that star, no several light years between them. None of that nonsense. This is why it's not a cheat. It's not a cheat. It's the virtue of God and life that it can create a magnificent projection. But when someone like me points out the fault in it, that if I am blind, I am denied the glory of the night, is that right? No, you will never be denied it, because it is inside you. And if you will only use the darkness that you have through your lack of sight to go deeper and deeper into me, inside that body, you will have the intimations of the glory of the state that makes every projection out here, sensory projection, possible. The beauty of the little sparrow. You know, they're always chirping somewhere in some shopping centre or somewhere. You'll always hear the sparrows chirping and shuffling. The beauty of those sparrows is in me. And I can know that because they are energetically in me, you see, intimations of that beauty, that wonder. And that's only one tiny little wonder of the earth that I have mentioned. That's what it is to realize immortality, to be one with the whole lot at once, and not to be separate. Not to be separate from any part of life ever again. To be one with it all. Sparrows, birds, leaves, animals, sky, clouds, everything. I am one with it because I have realized immortality. Now everything that I'm talking about is inside of you, and I don't want your mind to say, oh, I can't do it. oh, it's not for me. Your mind is stupid, like my mind is, unless it gets enlightened and is I am the master of my mind. I will not have my mind talking to me, because it knows nothing except about existence, the visible. And I live in the invisible, in the worship of the invisible, and yet I am here using my mind in existence. Now the spiritual life is about this journey into giving up my attachment, just my attachment to this existence. That doesn't mean that you don't exist, but your attachment to existence is your emotions. That's all. Emotions are like a glue that glue me to unhappiness, that glue me to the past. My lover left me 3 years ago, and all the lovers I've had since are nothing like that one, and I'll never forget it. Well, for God's sake, you better forget it, because that's an emotion holding you to the past. And there's no past in death or life. No past. You've lost all past. And while you hold on to the past here, you cannot find life. So I was saying, man and woman's way of escaping death, or trying to escape it, is to invent an afterlife, a life of survival, a life where I'll meet my mother, my father who have died, where I'll meet my children, and we'll all greet each other. Now I'm going to ask you what I call an intelligent question. When you go to visit your mother and your father on Sunday, how long do you, after you say your greetings and put your arms around each other, how long do you really enjoy being together? 20 minutes? While you talk about what you did yesterday or what are you going to do next week, mother? And then you hear their sad story or something. What the hell do you talk about? So when you survive and you're all together and you embrace and say, isn't this wonderful? You're going to keep doing that forever? Not likely. Well, am I insane, or do you think the other? But you see, we're so terrified of death because we only see the death of the human body. That's all we see. We're wrapped up in the death of that. And these dreadful priests in their black uniforms, dreadful priests, because black is death. Their death, their living death. And they're reciting this. Oh my God, have you seen the movies? They try to put it some other way at the graveside, don't they? They try to find something new in the Bible at the graveside. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, all the old bullshit, you know. On and on and on they go. Well, haven't we got something new to say about death? Do you think I'm saying something new about death? You put me beside the graveside, I'll always say something new about death. Because I am death and I love death because I love life. I'm not afraid to die. So, when they invent this emotional, they place the emotional, see, emotion is the most powerful thing apart from love. The most powerful thing in the psyche is man's and woman's emotions. And those emotions have to go somewhere, and they go into the psychic part of us, inside of us, because we're psychic. We're only material and mental up here, just up here. The rest of us is psyche until it goes down into the spirit, which is nothing. So we implant in the psyche, over thousands of years, we've implanted this fear of death. And as the fear of death is a reciprocal of that, we've invented survival after death. And so there is a place in the psyche of survival after death. So it's not impossible that when you die, and you still have an emotional attachment to all the things that you've loved here and to people, that you can dream on into that psychic place, and you can meet mum and dad, and you can do all the things that you always wanted to do in this dreamland of the psyche. Now, isn't that a virtue, that you can have that? The only thing is it doesn't last. But it lasts longer than your life here. And you know a freedom in this dream, or in that dream. But it doesn't last because it's not true. You're not conscious. You've still got forms in death. And of course death is the end of all forms. So you've still got a repercussion of your life on earth. And therefore you will have to go through some things. Because you've reproduced your life on earth, you will have to go through some not so good things in that life of survival after you get over the first euphoric part of the dream. Better it is not to survive. I describe it in my teaching as life after death is survival, but I say life beyond death is far more beautiful. There I am nothing. There I am pure consciousness. There I am the equivalent of the purity of God or whatever it is. I am one with that, what I came out of. I am one with that. I take nothing of the earth with me. No dream. I am awakened. I am one with it. So it is best not to try to survive in the sense of putting emotions into the psyche. Why do you want to survive? For God's sake, do you think it's going to be better? It's just going to be a better dream, that's all. Because this is only a dream. How do you tell things are a dream? Well, dreams always end. And everybody dies. That's the only way you can demonstrate this is a dream. If it were not a dream, it would go on forever and ever as you and me. But you will not go on forever in sense here, nor will I. The dream will end. And man and woman have invented where the dream does not end, and that is survival after death, or life after death. Pure psychic place. In the psyche, no doubt about it, there it is. Reincarnation, invented by men who were afraid to live now, who had to have lived before. It makes no difference who you were before, if that was true. What difference does it make to you? What difference does it make to you if you were Jesus Christ in a previous life? What difference does it make to you now? Not a skerrick, not a single thing does it do for you. And it teaches you nothing like past life experiences. That's all in the psyche. And some psychics can dip into past life that's in the psyche. And why not? But it's not your past life, it's just past life. My God, there's been enough of it, hasn't there? Come on, you've got to come out of this psychic imagination, this psychic need to invent something to escape the reality of life. And that's what the spiritual life is about, isn't it? So that we're not afraid of physical death anymore. And everybody's afraid of physical death until they have faced it, until they have been through it. Doesn't matter how many people say, I'm not afraid of physical death. That doesn't mean anything to me. I want to hear how they are when the hand comes on the shoulder and you've got 3 weeks to live. then you happen to start to know. But even then, you're not dying. You've only got 3 weeks to live. You're not dying. That's the mind that says, I'm dying. No, you're not. You're up and you're talking. You're not dying. When you're dying, you're really dying. You know? You're really dying. You're in a process of going down the vortex. You're not dying. You're still living. Right? I'm not dying. I've got cancer. I mean, look at me. I'm not dying. I'm everlasting life. The death of my body means nothing to me. When it is time for me to go and when it is time for you to go, you will go. Make no doubt about that. As when it was time for you to be born, you were born without any choice. And you will go by the same great intelligence as I will. Not before. Wonderful. But you see, the fear of death is a projection of the human mind. It's seen physical bodies die, and it says, that's me. Oh, I don't want that. And a fear develops. And then all the alternatives are imagined or psychically lived, instead of facing the fact that everybody dies. It has to have a virtue in it. There's a virtue in everything if only we can see straight. Because this life, this existence, is made by the greatest intelligence. It is even insulting to it to say just the greatest intelligence, the most holy, the most wonderful, glorious being, whatever, and I don't like to call it even being. It is in charge of every moment of my life and yours. And we have invented a different notion of life, which is called living. All right then, so I think we've covered as much as it is possible what death is, except to say the next time you are more intelligent than your anger and you are able to get there into your body before the emotion rises and directs your body, takes charge of your body and makes it tight and forceful, if you are able to get there first with your intelligence, then that will be like death for a while until it becomes your very nature. To overcome your anger, your right to be anger, is just like death, isn't it? To give up the emotions that we cling to as good and healthy when we no longer need them. To give them up, in the moment of giving them up, as we struggle to get there beyond emotional identification, is like death, isn't it? To give up fear, to know that I am not living my life honestly, to know that there is something wrong with my life which I know because I'm disturbed and unhappy by some event or person in my life, to do something about it, to act. That's like death. The fear is like the fear of death until I do it. And then I receive a great inrush or uprush of virtue or purity or knowledge. It is right. Oh, what a relief I have taken action instead of that living death that I've been in. So let us now go into this place of being. Let's approach it. If we're not there, we can approach it. It's inside our body, and what we do, you can close the eyes, what we do is just give up. We do not use the imagination. We just give up any stress that we can sense in our body. If there is stress around the head, then I am aware of the stress, the sensation of tension. And I allow it to drop down into my body, towards my belly. Now the fact that it's still there doesn't matter. It is the action of doing this intelligently that counts. And then if I feel a tightness in my throat, I intelligently enter my throat, as it were, and relax it. Give up. Die a bit to the force of holding on. And then my chest. I give up holding on to the area which would seem to be my chest. Ah, yes, how beautiful it is to give up and let it all fall down. In my solar plexus, which is a much finer place than all the others, the same thing. I put my intelligence there. And the mere fact of my intelligence being there, that I have the time and intelligence and perception to be in these places that seem to be inside my body, that is what we're doing. That brings me, starts me to awaken. And there it is, all down in my belly where it should be. And there, my own system can deal with everything there, as it does with all the garbage. And I am relaxed and easy. And now I can descend through my whole body into this place of being. I must always surrender to enter the place of being. I must surrender the tensions and stresses inside of me. For they will be like rafts that keep me floating. And best to sink into this place of being which you call me inside your body, this most intimate place of knowledge which nobody else can have except in their own body. They cannot know me in you. They can only know me in their own bodies. And even then you can't know me because it is beyond description. Me has no attributes except to say these words that have no opposite. I can say it is good. It has no opposite. There's never any bad in me. I can say it is right. There's never any unrightness there. And I can say it's true. There's never any untruth in it. It is an amazing place, and I don't know where it is except that I do enter it through my physical body, through my senses, and then my senses disappear, and I am just being, instead of being a human being with all its problems and difficulties. I am now realizing or being the state of being that is beyond death, that is life. Now, if you keep your intelligence, if you find yourself going to sleep, you have to put your intelligence on the sensation of your body, and you can't go to sleep while you are sensing the sensation in your body. Then you can pass through the sensation again into being. But sometimes the brain takes this as a command to go to sleep, because it's not used to being still like this. Sleep only means that I've entered a dream. Instead of holding on to the reality of my body, intelligently addressing the sensation. There's nothing wrong with going off to sleep, but it's just to point out how to not do it if it becomes habitual. Now in this place, this is the place of consciousness, this place of being. There is no movement, no thought, no forms, nothing, no imagination. It is purely a place beyond description. Now remaining there, you can open your eyes and bring yourself further into existence, this is the place of awareness. We are aware of everything here. There's no consciousness here whatever. The words are interchangeable in all the New Age dictions and things because people don't know the truth that use them. This is a world of awareness. And what we're doing in the spiritual life is gradually detaching from the awareness so that I can have intimations and reach the consciousness that's behind the world of awareness. Now, would anyone like to ask me a question that might have arisen in you in that silence? Yes, Lena, is it?
Yes, Barry. When I go into me, often I can drop into me by sensing the well-being, and I'm right there. But there are other times when there's a focus behind my eyes, and I get those amorphous purple blobs coming in and out, and I can't change my focus.
Yes.
And I was wondering if there's a way through those into me.
Yes, I hear. Well, first of all, it is a good thing and an easy way to go into being, to connect with the well-being in your body. Now, everybody has well-being in it. That's why it's alive. That's why we want to continue to live, because life is good and we have implanted in us the sense of well-being. Now there is an adjective in front of the being, well-being, but it's something that everybody can connect with because everybody has well-being in it. Every animal has well-being in it. Otherwise nothing could go on surviving. It would be too terrible if we didn't have well-being in our bodies. So can you, my question is, as a result of what Lena was saying, are you able to connect now with the well-being in your body? Well, there it is. Yeah. All the animals, the birds and everything have it. Only they exist in their well-being. And I suspect the birds sing from their well-being, just as we tend to sing when we are in our well-being. And we say, what a beautiful day it is. Or I love you. I love you. And we might walk out and sing, mightn't we, from our well-being. The other matter of the usually purple circles that close up and then expand in part of the content, part of the awareness, is psychic. they're psychic images, and they're quite common. You close the eyes and against the black background you get this usually purple, although I've heard people say other colours, but usually it's purple. Closing, opening, closing, or two of them, closing, opening. That's part of the psyche. And again, I would suspect that the best way to get rid of that is to focus on the sensation of your body, not focus up here. I would say so because the sensation of the body is like an anchor. It's something for the intelligence, especially when we're setting out and for some time after, to anchor the intelligence on. Just like you might look at a tree and see how long you can really look at the tree because you're anchored on the tree without thought coming in, without dreaming away from it. So the body provides that inside as a sensation. And I think that will eventually, you'll go through these comings and goings of the psyche. You will go through it. The psychic world is something we've all got to go through because it's just there. It's got a certain integrity of its own, and yet much of it has been made by our own beliefs and emotions of mankind since we began. So there's all sorts of things in there. There's truth and there's non-truth, and it's all mixed up in the psyche. And therefore we can hear voices speak from there, really speak from there. Someone wrote to me the other day that they were, I think, waking up from sleep, and they heard the word Beth, a woman's name. Now it has no relationship, the person said, to anyone they know. He thought it would be better if it said death. But it didn't, it said Beth. Now all of you, or most of you, at some time or other, are likely to have had this. A word that said so clearly that you can't mistake it, and yet it might not have any reference to anything in your life. That's the psychic world. It's an extraordinary world, and it's just next to us. I mean, it's right there inside of us. As I say, it's filled with lies, and it's filled with bits of truth. And you've got to be very discerning to tell the difference between the two. Because it's filled with channelers, ascended masters, so-called ascended masters who are in limbo in there. You know what limbo is? They can never get out. They're men, usually, that have been with a master at some time in this existence. They never made it to being a master. They never realized God, which is what a master does. That's what makes him a master. But they were next to the master and they heard his words. They were probably his right-hand man, but they never realized God. So they heard what the master said, and they were indeed developed consciousness, because to be with the master, to serve the master, to live with the master, to be the master's right-hand man, does signify a certain development that has to be there, spiritual development. But it's still not the truth. And so when these people die, they are attached to the earth. And then because they could not do what they wanted to do in their own body while they were alive, that is, be the master, they then possess some living person's body to speak through and say through in their great wisdom, which they could not utter while they were on earth. And that's thieving again and cheating, to possess someone's body for your own truth instead of being responsible for it, isn't it? In your own body. And the master, all masters who have realized God, that is, God being the unknown, God being the Most High, God being the eternal being, any master who's realized that will never channel back into existence. He goes beyond death, not after death, and sit in limbo, pontificating from a place which the poor people of the earth think has got truth in it. It hasn't, because it hasn't got the final truth. So the master never comes back. When his life ends, he has said it all, done it all, nothing more to say. Finished. And now I go to the Father, to the great unknown, never to be seen again, thank God. Right? And that's the place of consciousness. No survival for the master. Thank you very much.
My friend, life is death and birth. My friend, life is the whole wide earth. My friend, life is sorrow and the tear. But my friend, life does not know fear. All the people would drag me down, but not while my friend life's around. My friend, life is change and pain, but that's all part of my friend's game. Play the game and it can be fun. Fight to win and the fun's all done. My friend, life is an outstretched hand. He's your friend too if you grab it, man.